On July 4th, 2002, I went on Danimation.com to write a trip report. I was 14 years old and I had just gotten back from the biggest coaster trip of my life. This trip report was lost to history. But then, as I was researching my documentary for Kings Island, suddenly I come across a file and I can't believe it. It's my original trip report from 20 years ago. I thought it would be cool on this 4th of July, exactly 20 years to this day when it was posted, to read the report here, edited for some mild language, and look back at my first trip to Cedar Point, Paramount's Kings Island, Holiday World, and Six Flags Worlds of Adventure. So here we go. This is basically word for word. If I have any comments, I'll put them in the text below, kind of like a pop-up video. I just got back from Ohio, so here's my trip report. I'll try not to stretch this out too much, but it will still be long. Day 1. On Sunday morning, 9-something a.m., I left Burbank Airport in Southern California to Columbus, Ohio. However, we had a layover in Phoenix. Layovers suck. Anyway, the flight was smooth, and we arrived in Columbus a little before 9 p.m. We lost 3 hours in the flight from Phoenix to Columbus, so I was pretty wired and I had a hard time sleeping that night. But after landing in Columbus, my dad and I drove to Sandusky, about 2 hours, all in the dark with me attempting to read a map. This didn't start out too well, but I got used to it. We checked into the Breakers Express around midnight, so we can get into the park an hour early, and we eventually got to sleep that night. Day 2, a weird day at the greatest park on earth. Getting up at 6:30 a.m. Eastern Time was not easy for me, since to me it was actually 3:30, but the greatest park on earth was less than 300 yards away, and that motivated me to get up. We were the only ones in the parking lot at 7:30 a.m., and we waited for the employees to come in so we can buy our tickets. But between 7:30 and 8:30, the blue skies turned gray and it started to downpour. Not to mention, I was getting attacked by the bugs from Lake Erie. Needless to say, I was not having fun, but this would quickly change. The gates opened for hotel guests, and I took the long run to Millennium Force. We got the second train in the middle, and this sucker nearly made me soil my pants. Anywho, I rode the Force twice that morning, once in the middle and once in the very front, and I won't go into too much detail because I'll do that later. After Millennium Force, I took a very disappointing ride on Mantis, and then the rest of the day had on and off showers, keeping the crowds away, letting me ride all 13 adult coasters multiple times. After spending 14 and a half hours at Cedar Point on Monday, it was time to leave and catch a few hours of sleep, just to get up and do it all again tomorrow. Day 3. The only reason I went to Cedar Point on Tuesday was to ride Magnum a few more times, and to meet Cedar Point Man, aka Sam. My dad and I had our Cedar Fair passes by then, so we got to the park at a more comfortable time. Me and my dad still joined the running of the bulls to the Force, and that's the only ride we got that day. Since Tuesday was a nice day, lines were longer and I didn't get as many rides in. Sam was too lazy to get up early, so we met up at Mantis at 3 p.m. I wanted to give Mantis another shot because it didn't impress me the first time. After a long wait and chilling with Sam, we finally got on the ride, and this one didn't impress me much more than the first one. After our ride on Mantis, we bid farewell to Cedar Point Man, his friend, his parents, and my dad and I were off to Kings Mills, Ohio. Day 4. The Island of Headaches. I think my displeasure with Paramount's Kings Island started with the lack of sleep I had over the last 3 days. I got to the park at 9:30, and they let us in, 30 minutes before the rides opened. My dad and I waited for the beast to open because that was the main reason I wanted to come, but it broke down during testing, so I had to wait. Let me just say that PKI has a bunch of rough rides. I rode Vortex first, and that was pretty jerky, but still a good ride. Racer, Top Gun, Face Off, Flight of Fear, and Rugrats all gave me pretty smooth rides, and I appreciated that. However, Beast, Son of Beast, Adventure Express, and Vortex all gave me headaches, and I stopped at the Mini Mart after we left the park to buy some Tylenol. Since we left the park pretty early, we decided to go into Cincinnati and see the Reds get beat down by the Mariners. That pretty much summed up Wednesday evening, but that night, I decided that we should head to Santa Claus, Indiana, a 3-hour drive from Kings Mills, to see Holiday World on Thursday. Day 5, the friendliest park on earth. I got up at 9 a.m. Thursday, so I was totally refreshed for the long driving that day. We exited Ohio and went through Kentucky. I was pissed the grass wasn't actually blue, and quickly got into Indiana. Holiday World was very friendly and clean, plus free sodas, and that was a great luxury. We only spent 3 hours there and got 8 rides between Raven and Legend. I'll go into more detail in the countdown. After leaving Santa Claus, we took the long car trip from southern to northern Indiana, then across the Ohio border, and stopped in Toledo on our way to Six Flags Worlds of Adventure. Indiana is a completely different world, especially if you're used to the suburbs and the city like I am. Day 6. People Can Fly. We arrived at Six Flags Worlds of Adventure a little before noon, and my expectations for it were low because I've heard a lot of bad things. For a Friday, the park was dead. The longest wait we had all day was 10 minutes for X-Flight. Double Loop and Mind Eraser are both closed. That wasn't a big deal, but I wanted to double my coaster count and I came 3 coasters short. After leaving Worlds of Adventure, it poured on the way up to Cleveland, but it stopped so we could drive downtown and get videotape of the Brown Stadium and Jacobs Field. We then drove to Columbus and stayed near the airport for departure on day 7. Day 7. I don't like flying in airplanes for peculiar reasons, but it was my only way home, so I had to live with it. What can I say? A rough ride home, plus another layover in Phoenix, and here I am, in one piece, and my coaster count elevated to 65. Now for the countdown. The countdown only includes the 31 coasters I rode in this trip, starting with 31 being the worst and 1 being the best, including how many rides I took and how long I waited. 31. Mantis. I did not enjoy Mantis at all. The drop was alright, but the brakes killed the intensity and the potential this ride has. To me, it was just as lame as Riddler, and delivered a somewhat rough ride. B&M did a good job with this coaster, but Cedar Point's trim brakes really took this ride to the dumpster. Not to mention, the ops make you stand up rigid. That makes no sense to me. This gets the lowest spot in my countdown. 30. Raging Wolf Bobs. Not as bad as some people made it out to be, but this wooden coaster failed to deliver an exciting ride after the first drop. About mid-ride, I got a shoulder in the mouth from my dad riding next to me, causing minor blood loss, but this didn't affect the ride negatively or positively. 29. Rugrats Runaway Reptar. Not that I didn't enjoy this kiddie family coaster, but it is a junior coaster, and I just enjoyed the other rides more. 28. Cedar Creek Mine Ride. A nice mine train coaster with not much of a setting, but it's good to up your coaster count. I like the smoothness and the Helix finale, but a better setting, like Magic Mountain's Gold Rusher, would make this ride pretty good. 27. Adventure Express. Another mine train coaster with a very good setting and a very interesting little lift hill finale, especially with those little pounding stone creatures, but this would have been better if it was a little smoother. I admit, I only gave it 1 ride, and I already had a headache before the ride, but its bumpiness made me enjoy the ride less in comparison to a nice smooth ride. 26. Disaster Transport. This had a long line, but it was air-conditioned and had nice theming, so it wasn't all that bad. The ride is similar to Space Mountain, but I was disappointed about how you could see where you were going, and the lack of effects like Space Mountain has. I still enjoyed it, but it's a bit too short for the amount of time that I waited for it. 25. Wildcat. I really enjoyed this ride, but you can get similar experiences on other rides like Wild Mice. Still, a nice little coaster that's fun to ride, but this attracts long lines with the little kids. 24. Son of Beast. I heard good and bad things about the tallest, fastest, and only looping wooden coaster in the world. Unfortunately, the bad overpowered the good in this instance. This ride had great speed and intense helices, and the loop was pretty intense, but this wood coaster is a rough rider, and it was pretty difficult to enjoy. Not as rough as its dad, and that's why it even got this high on the list. 23. Legend. I expected a lot more from the Legend. This ride's main focus was speed and laterals. This really isn't my type of ride. I like rides with stomach-wrenching, airtime-filled drops, and Legend only had 1 or 2 of these. This ride was relatively smooth, just a little boring and repetitive for my taste. 22. Corkscrew. I rode this in the back seat when it started to rain, and it gave me a great ride. I got propelled over the first drop, and got some serious airtime over the first bunny hop. The corkscrews over the midway have a pleasant effect, and the corkscrew is a smooth and enjoyable ride. 21. Face Off. I figured Face Off to be a ride similar to Deja Vu, and that's just what it was. I'm sure I would have enjoyed this ride a lot more had I never ridden Deja Vu, but this ride had pretty much the same effect on me. It was just slower and shorter. I still enjoyed this smooth, thrilling ride. 20. Big Dipper. I've heard really good things about this old wooden coaster. Turns out it wasn't bad at all. I liked its old-fashioned feel that threw you around the car, and the little pops of air it delivered. 19. Vortex. This aero multi-looper had no headbanging, but the track was really bumpy, causing my brain to jar from its normal position. I liked the first drop and the turnaround the most. Plus, the overall setting of this coaster was great. Without the roughness, Vortex would be ranked a lot higher. 18. Racer. This is a really good ride if you like drops and small pops of airtime, along with the thrill of racing another coaster. The forwards track is a nice ride, but the backwards track provides many stomach-wrenching drops, and that makes this coaster high on my list. 17. Blue Streak. Another old wooden coaster. This ride is well maintained, so it's quick, wild, smooth, and provides adequate airtime. This is really what a classic wooden coaster should be like. I was very impressed with Cedar Point's oldest operating coaster. 16. Iron Dragon. Everyone disses this ride, but I enjoyed it much more than Ninja. The ride isn't that slow throughout its course. It has a great finale through the mist, and it doesn't have an annoying lift hill at the end that leads directly into the station. 15. Serial Thriller. This was one of the big surprises on my trip. This provided a smooth, no headbanging ride, with smooth, well-executed inversions over a compact and interesting setting. 14. Mean Streak. Even with the first drop trim brake on, this ride is still pretty wild and long with a small amount of airtime. It wasn't very rough either, and it was very re-rideable. Since it's located in the back of the park, The lines are really short. 13. Batman Night Flight. Coined Boreman Night Flight by some enthusiasts. This ride is definitely not as good as Medusa West, but it's still not bad. I am a big fan of the flawless design, and even despite Batman's roughness, I still enjoyed this ride very much. Also, because of the walk-on lines, I finally got to ride a flawless coaster in the front seat, and that enhances the ride a great deal. 12. Superman Ultimate Escape. Standing as the original Intimate Impulse coaster, this ride provides once unique thrills that can be still enjoyed by any coaster enthusiast. The highlight of this ride is definitely the reverse LIMs on the back vertical spike. These just hold you for a second or two, catching many unsuspecting riders off guard. 11. The Beast. The Beast not in the top 10? The Beast could be number 1. It's extremely long, fast, wild, and has the best setting of any coaster in the world, but it's just so rough and it's hard to enjoy. In fact, I did not enjoy the ride at all. As my dad said, the Beast was the perfect name for this coaster, but I could have also called it Thrasher or Hurler. That would have had the same effect. This ride gets such a high ranking for what it could be, or what it used to be, but from what I experienced, this is hardly a top 10 coaster anymore. 10. Villain. This wood coaster was added to Geauga Lake as part of the new Six Flags Ohio in 2000. This is probably not at the top of everyone's list, but it is worthy of a top 10 coaster. This ride is long with moderate airtime and lots of stomach-wrenching drops that make you crave more. This ride is much better if your lap bar is not stapling you in. 9. Gemini. First off, Gemini is one of the best names for a racing coaster ever thought up. Second, this ride should not disappoint. It has a 125-foot drop, and it has many bunny hops following, giving great airtime, along with the thrill of racing another track, and a nice helix finale to end a great ride. 8. Wicked Twister. Similar to Superman Ultimate Escape, this is a modified version of Intamin's traditional impulse coaster. It has a twisted back spike, plus is taller and faster. Wicked Twister is extremely intense, and the backwards twisting spike is a one-of-a-kind experience you can only get on this coaster. 7. Flight of Fear. Modified with lap bars recently, this alien-themed coaster is now world-class. I finally got to ride it at PKI, and it was far from disappointing. The twists, turns, and inversions in a nearly pitch-black building. That really made this coaster unpredictable and wild. The lap bars eliminate headbanging, and that makes this coaster as enjoyable as possible. 6. Top Gun. I didn't have very high expectations for this coaster, but boy, did it surprise me. After being surprised by Iron Dragon, I figured 2 aero-suspended coasters couldn't top my expectations. I was wrong. This coaster starts out with a steep straight drop into a tree-filled canyon, and it keeps a good amount of speed through the forest-like course, while swinging at a near 90-degree angle on some of the bank turns. This coaster surprised me a great deal and definitely deserves the number 6 spot. 5. Raptor. You better believe the slogan, Raptor rules the sky. This is one intense inverted coaster. It features all the intensity of the Batman the Ride clones, plus more inversions and a longer track length. Raptor's drop makes my stomach churn every time, and the helix finale by the queue, without a doubt, makes this a world-class coaster. 4. X-Flight. X-Flight is Worlds of Adventure's newest and best addition. It provides such a unique and pleasurable experience that every human yearns to do. Fly. X-Flight is the closest you'll ever get to flying, with terrain specially designed so you're harnessed in face to the ground while the coaster is in motion. Vekoma really did a great job in simulating the whole flying experience. The loop is very intense, and so is the helix finale. This will always be in the top 5 in my books. 3. Raven. Voted the #1 wooden coaster in the world for several years by the Golden Ticket, I finally got to experience a flight on the Raven to see what all the hoopla was about. The relatively short drop provides a good pop of airtime, and the whole ride is fantastic, rushing through the woods, swooping by a lake, and providing great airtime on sharp drops. Awesome coaster, very well done. 2. Magnum XL 200. Once this ride came to the brakes after the first time I rode it, I said, that's the way a hypercoaster should be. The drop was steep and long and made my stomach drop. The twisting second drop was smooth and made its way into a tunnel for a great effect. The pretzel knot was trimmed and a bit slow, but that did not take away from the airtime I got in the final bunny hops. This is a great coaster, and now I see why it was, and still is, so highly praised. 1. Millennium Force. Big surprise, right? Millennium Force is the most amazing piece of machinery I've ever set my eyes on. Pictures do not do it justice. You have to see it in person to get a load of how tall it really is. The first drop is spectacular, and it feels like you're gonna get flung into Canada as you plummet down the 80-degree drop. Then comes over 6,000 feet of twisted track consisting of bunny hops, overbank turns, and straight track, where you can just feel the speed. Millennium Force is a spectacular coaster, and it stands as my favorite steel coaster. Only the Great Ghost Rider stands between Millie and my all-time top spot. Thus concludes my trip report. I hope you enjoyed reading it as much as I did writing it. So there you go. It's very interesting reading this contemporary report I wrote 20 years ago, and how my opinions of some of these rides have changed so much. Let me know what you think of my opinions from 2002, and if you have any other thoughts, sound off in the comments below. Before you go, don't forget to drop a like, and give me a sub if you're new here. Also, check out my links below for my Discord server, and my second channel where I post copyright-free off-ride footage, and my baseball channel if you're a baseball freak like I am. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time.